Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Now, if you have been online at all recently or been watching the news, you may have seen this. This is RFK's new food pyramid, and I wanted to take some time today to talk to you guys about my thoughts on it because I found it very interesting, especially as someone who's really into health and wellness. For a little bit of context, I began working out during COVID. I can show some before photos over here, and now in 2026, I have been an avid gym lover, very passionate about nutrition for about 6 years now. So I thought that I had some know-how about how to get in shape, how to stay in shape. I've also recently had a lot of blood work done and stuff like that, proving that what I'm doing is working, at least for me. So, with that being said, I thought it'd be fun to talk about this pyramid, talk about what I think is a really good shift, talk about what I think are not great shifts, and my nutritional advice for anyone who may be looking to tighten up their nutrition or anything like that. So, yeah, let's get right into it with first starting with a disclaimer that, again, while I am very seasoned in the gym and with nutrition, I am not a doctor. I am not certified in anything. So this is just me yapping on my YouTube channel. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'm not trying to advise you to do anything you don't want to do, more just a commentary than anything, and my personal advice from my personal story. All right, let's get into it. So I will try and put the pyramid somewhere up here so we can kind of go over it, but I'm looking at it right here, and I'm also using an article written by USA Today that kind of breaks down how this is supposed to be read and some of the differences we're making. So the first way to kind of understand this is understanding that the foods at the top of the pyramid are going to be the ones that are being suggested to eat in abundance. And then as you move down the pyramid, those are the foods that you should be eating less of. And then there's some more substantial changes in terms of foods that have been taken out altogether that you should just not be eating. What I was reading up on said that it's really going against the approach of incorporating all foods and everything in moderation. And that's probably the first dislike I have going for this is I'm a firm believer that everything in moderation is key for a sustainable diet. Ultimately, obviously, there is an optimal diet that probably does not include ultra processed foods, ultra sugary foods, stuff like that. But we are human beings and we are not robots. And I find that I have the most success personally with my diet when I'm able to look at it from more of an 80-20 approach, aka 80% of the time I'm eating lean proteins, my vegetables, healthy fats, balancing it out with carbs and stuff like that. And 20% of the time, I'm going out with my friends, I'm going out for drinks, I'm, ordering K-fry, whatever. So that's definitely one of the first things that I don't love about the switch here. And let's balance that out with something I am enjoying, which is a heavier focus on protein. I think America's gone a little protein crazy within these last couple of years, but I do think it's really important for people to be aware that the more protein you eat, the better you are supporting your body in the long term, especially as women, things like our bone density and muscle density can start deteriorating as we get older, and it's really important to not only lift weights but support muscle tissue regrowth with protein. And I also think it's important for people to understand just how much you need, because ultimately I think it's very normalized to eat a lower protein diet, right? Like when I was growing up, it was very normal for me to have cereal for breakfast, or like toast and stuff like that. And I think incorporating even one source of protein into those meals can make a huge difference, but people don't, it's hard to like grasp the quantity of protein you could be eating a day until you really prioritize it. If you've ever tried to eat 100 grams of protein a day, you start to really notice like, oh, I wasn't eating any protein before. So I am really enjoying that. I also love seeing vegetables and fruits at the top. Honestly, I think these on any nutritional pyramid should be at the top. The micronutrients that come with vegetables and fruits are so essential for bodily functions, hormonal health, and these types of things. I think they're really important to incorporate in as many meals as you can. If I'm having a meal, I typically like to make sure I either have a vegetable or a fruit with that meal. And there are a lot of really easy ways to get them in. One time I made these absolutely delicious zucchini brownies that I learned how to make from my college kitchen. Shout out JMU, love you. and they were delicious and it didn't taste like greens at all. So I think seeing that up there is super amazing. Let's move down the pyramid a little bit. One of the big emphasis of this pyramid is the emphasis on fats. And there's two sides to this for me. On side one, healthy fats are so essential for hormonal function. As someone who is allergic to nuts, I've had to make a very intentional effort of eating enough healthy fats, especially when I'm cooking at home. When you're eating out, it's a lot easier because foods tend to be fattier when you're eating out anyway. You know, they're being fried and things and whatnot. But when I'm at home and making pretty simple meals, I have to be very intentional about, like, let's make sure this has some sort of healthy fat on the side of it that is proportional to the size of the meal. So that means I'm incorporating avocado, I'm incorporating cheese, any plant-based butters, for example. So I do think that's really important. But on the flip side of that, I don't think necessarily promoting full fat options 24/7 is a great option either for a nation that is struggling with addiction to fast food and these kinds of things. Ultimately, and what's going to come down to, and what any pyramid is going to come down to, is everyone has unique needs, and there really isn't a pyramid that is going to meet the needs of every single person's nutritional needs, because they all have unique, bodily functions. They're in a unique position, and how they're going to get healthier is going to be dependent on what their body is doing now, and where they need to get healthier in, if that makes sense. Like, for example, if I have a friend who's really looking to put on muscle tissue, she's probably going to be more focused on eating higher protein, eating higher calorie, versus if I have a friend who's really looking to lose weight, they're going to be focused on eating less calories and losing weight. And when it comes into calories in versus calories out, fat is going to be ultimately something you need to be very cognizant of, because fat is an essential macronutrient, but it is the most dense macronutrient calorically. So what does that mean? That means if I have 2 grams of an avocado and I have 2 grams of rice, the avocado is going to generally have more calories because it is comprised of mostly fats, versus a carbohydrate is going to be less calorically dense. Carbohydrates and protein have about the same calories per gram versus fats. I don't remember exactly what those numbers are, but I do know that that is true. So the fat argument is an interesting one, and I don't think we're necessarily going at it from the right angle. Again, I think healthy fats are so essential, but I also think America currently is struggling with an obesity epidemic, and in order to combat that, I think it is essential that we're intentional about how much fat we're getting in, but also how that can be, how that can go against our goals if we're someone who's looking to perhaps cut down on our weight, if that's your goal. So again, I'm not trying to tell anyone what they should be doing. It's just, it ultimately comes down to everyone has different goals. And in a country where predominantly people are looking to cut back, fats are going to go against that goal. So again, very back and forth about that. I love seeing avocados near the top, though. I think most of the issue people were talking about is with the dairy that's near the top, and just being very predominantly pushing full fat dairy over anything else. Because also at the end of the day, like 2% milk, that's not a huge difference, right? So we don't need to be like stressing about like whole milk versus 2% versus skim milk. So we get further towards the bottom, and here's another dislike I have. We're putting whole grains at the bottom and ultimately demonizing carbohydrates a little bit. Now, this argument has been made time and time again. People who are on keto, for example, are very much of the mindset that eating no carbs will put your body into ketosis and you will lose weight. And it is a way to lose weight, but ultimately weight loss comes down to being in a calorie deficit. And that's just a way to achieve that goal. If you're someone who doesn't prioritize carbohydrates, you don't like them very much, that's totally an approach you can take. The reason you can do that with carbs and not proteins or fats is because proteins and fats are essential macronutrients. I would argue carbs are too, but if I eat very minimal grams of carbs, I will not run into an issue with like my bodily functions, if that makes sense. Versus, for example, if I ate very low to no fats, my hormone balance would become completely out of whack. It would be very unhealthy for me to do that. So I don't love seeing carbs at the bottom though, because I do think they get so much demonization from people who are diehard keto. And I'm not saying keto is evil. I'm just saying everyone has a different need. Once again, there is no there is no pyramid that is going to fit every individual. And carbs are so essential for getting energy. Energy levels and stability come from carbs, and they also are so helpful with satiety. I find that I am the most satiated when I have a meal comprised of lean, lean protein, some sort of carbohydrates, vegetables, and a healthy fat. That's how I feel the most satiated. And so neglecting a whole entire food group can definitely be dangerous for some individuals. And I don't think we need to have them at the bottom of the pyramid. I think, if anything, if we're putting protein and healthy fats at the top, that carbs should be right at the top with them, because ultimately a whole balanced meal is going to leave you feeling the most satisfied and leave your body functioning at its prime. Especially if you're someone who works out, right? Because if you're someone who works out, you need to have energy for that workout, and you need to recover after that workout, and carbohydrates help repair your body. So those are some of my opinions on the new one. I'm looking at the old one right now, and I do like the My Plate framework a little bit better, because I think it prioritizes moderation and balance within your plate, versus I do think the Take This Pyramid is presenting to us is one that is very much, there are certain food groups that are evil and we should never be eating. When, once again, I am a huge proponent of moderation. I think most of the diets that do not work out for people are ones that cut out certain food groups, which ends up promoting cravings and ultimately can lead you to just be very unhappy or to binge. So how would I redesign this food pyramid? I would keep healthy fats and protein at the top. I would keep vegetables at the top, and I would move dairy down a little bit. It's kind of ironic dairy is so high considering how many people in America are lactose intolerant. I don't really eat much dairy because it doesn't agree with me very well. I don't think it needs to be at the top. So I would move dairy down, and I would have protein, vegetables and fruits, and healthy fats at the top. I would think on the second rung, I would put whole grains. And then let's see, what else would we want to put there? Definitely want to have whole grains. And I think I would actually split up proteins. I would do lean proteins at the top, and then I would move down and maybe put more like red meats on the second tier, leaner, non-poultry meats. And then on the third tier, I think I would do fattier meats, because not all protein is made the same, and some of it can be very detrimental to, your cholesterol, any of those, quantifiers you see in your blood work. Red meat can definitely be detrimental to those. So I think it's necessary for us to recognize that there are different, no protein is made the same. I'm someone who prioritizes eating poultry, seafood, and plant-based proteins because I find that they're the leanest. You definitely don't have to do that, but I like to have my healthy fats kind of on the side, add them on, versus if you're eating a fattier piece of meat, you're already kind of getting your fats from those meats. So just something to be aware of. Another protein I would have at the top is eggs. I will die on the hill that eggs are like the perfect food. They have healthy fats, protein, just pair it with a carb and you will be golden, good to go. I would put, I know potatoes are with vegetables, but I want to specifically put that at the top because potatoes are actually the food with the highest satiety index, so they're going to leave you feeling the most full. So if you're someone who's looking to lose weight, potatoes are a great life hack to feeling full and still being in a calorie deficit. Again, vegetables, fruits at the top, absolutely. Whole grains, second of all, or just any complex carbs. I think simple carbs are helpful too in certain situations, but I think complex carbs are the ones we really want to make sure we're getting in. I'm talking about rice, I'm talking about whole grain breads. Again, you could kind of put I'm putting potatoes with vegetables, but if you didn't put them there, you could put them with complex carbs. And then, yeah, third tier, I would definitely have fattier meats. I think I would put dairy at third tier. I don't know why we're like gassing up dairy so much. You really don't need it, in my opinion. Like, you don't, again, everything in moderation, but I don't see why it's so high, in my opinion. And then I think on my fourth tier, I would put ultra processed foods to have in moderation. I think we need to have everything in here. And ultimately, if you're living in America, you're not going to not be eating ultra processed foods sometimes. All of us go out to eat. All of us used to buy lunch at elementary school. It's going to happen. And ultimately, with ultra processed foods, I think it's more important to emphasize how to read a food label and how to understand which foods, even if they're processed, might still be nutrient dense to you, versus which foods might be detrimental to your energy levels, your blood work, and all this other stuff. Being able to analyze added sugars versus proteins versus what ingredients in a food might not align with your fitness goals. So I think an emphasis on that would be much more helpful than completely removing it from the pyramid. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about the food pyramid. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. What do you guys think about dairy being at the top? I think that's so odd. And let me know if you guys like this style of video, if you have any more questions you want me to answer in terms of fitness, nutrition, or anything like that. But I will see you in the next video.